So, Jeff, welcome to the Personal Finance Podcast.
I am excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
So we are so excited to have you here, Jeff, because I have followed your content for a very long time. And today we're going to be talking about income accelerators. And one of the coolest things about income accelerators is I think this is going to be a life-changing topic for a lot of people once they learn how this works. But first, I want to dive into your story because you have a really cool background as someone who I have learned a ton from over the years. You went from the military to owning your own financial planning practice, and then you have a multi-million-dollar online business as well. So can you share some of your background and how you got to where you are?
Yeah, first, I'd just like to start off with once again, thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure to be here and share more of my story. First, I think people need to know this about me. So my parents divorced when I was young. I was 3 years old. After they divorced, both my parents, independent of each other, filed bankruptcy, not once, but twice. So total 4 times collectively. And when my dad passed away about 14 years ago, he passed away with a negative net worth. My mom is still living, still making ends meet, but has made a lot of poor financial decisions along the way. And I share all of that because that is the financial lessons that were passed down to me as a young child, even up into college. So I didn't have a huge inheritance. I was not surrounded. I didn't even know what a millionaire was. Like, my first car was a 94 Geostorm, I believe, 95 Geostorm. If you don't know what a Geostorm is, look it up. And it looks like something Ronald McDonald would drive around in. So that was really like my introduction to personal finance. I didn't know anything about business. So it wasn't until stumbling into being a finance major where I finally started getting introduced to the basic personal finance. So that was a little bit about my initial journey. And through deciding to major in finance, an internship led to becoming a financial advisor. And that's once again started to learn more about investing and retirement planning and the importance about compounding interest, which once again, it didn't make sense to me. I was introduced to that a little bit as a junior in college, but it wasn't until I started meeting with people that were, dear Lord, 30, 40 years older than me that I saw the mistakes that they had made when I was, that age. And all of a sudden, it's hit me like, oh, I don't want to become them. Like, I don't want to wake up, be 70 and be like, man, what did I do? And one of the common mistakes I kept hearing people share over and over and over again was, I wish I would have saved more. I wish I would have started earlier. And I heard that at the age of, I think, 24-ish. So thankful that I heard it when I did. And that's when I became really passionate about investing and saving, changing my own life, but also how can I give this information to others that are my age, maybe a little bit older, maybe a little bit younger, so they don't fall in that same financial trap that I saw a lot of people I was working with client-wise and also my own parents.
I love that. And thank you for sharing some of your background there too, because one of the biggest things that this podcast and our goal for this podcast is I truly believe anybody in this world can build wealth. And that's kind of why we started and the impetus of this podcast at the very beginning. And one of the cool things that we talk about all the time is that no matter where you come from, you can start to build wealth over time. And it's one of the biggest things that you can do to change your family's financial trajectory. And you're a great example of doing that. So as people listen to this podcast, I want you to kind of think through that as well, because we have a lot of people who are just starting out who listen to this podcast or trying to figure out how to build wealth. They came from backgrounds where their family did not have a lot of money or they were not good with money. And so that is the cool thing about as you listen to Jeff's story, he has absolutely changed his family's financial future. And he has done it starting at the age of 24. So a lot of people come to me and they'll say, hey, I'm 22. Is it too late for me to get started now? Obviously, it's not. You have a very long time to compound. And that's one of the things that you just have to understand, that over time, you're going to be able to change that as long as you have that financial education. And this is part of doing that. So that's one of the coolest things there. So when it comes to some of these income accelerators, income is one of the biggest things that we talk about in this podcast as well, Jeff, because it is something that I think can solve a lot of financial problems for people as long as they know what to do with that income after they earn it. And so it can really change your financial trajectory. So this is something that I really learned early on, and I think it's something that really changed my financial life as well. And the first one we can talk about is, you call it accelerated learning. So can you share what accelerated learning is and some of the ways we can accelerate our knowledge?
Yeah, so I just want to start off saying, I'm dumb. I'm I'm a slow learner. I'm stubborn. I definitely fall into that belief that like I can figure it out like no matter what. And finally, I think after just banging my head against the wall like time and time again, I finally realized, there are other people out there that have figured it out probably a lot faster, a lot smoother than I have. So that's when I started just leaning on how can I learn from others? And one of the first ways was that because I went to college, like I don't know if that's accelerated learning. I feel like I was just on a treadmill going nowhere. But when I started allowing myself to, first was like reading books, which sounds kind of silly, but the reality is like, if you're reading a book and somebody's sharing, man, their journey and there's from a, 20-year after the fact, what happened. Like you're getting such a fast track of all the mistakes, all the failures, books, podcasts, courses, which is something that I initially resisted for the longest time. And I still hear a lot of resistance on that. But when I started realizing, okay, I can go out and try to figure it out the hard way, or I can read a book, listen to a podcast, maybe hire somebody, a consultant that can fast track that, that learning curve. And when I started seeing that as an investment and not an expense, a sunk cost, or a waste of time, when I allowed myself, because I think it's a struggle with a lot of people. It's like, oh, they think of investing. It's like, oh, I'm buying stocks, I'm buying ETFs, I'm buying crypto. It's like, no, investing into books or your time into podcasts or courses or anything that's going to advance that learning curve. That is a huge investment. And oftentimes the ROI that you're getting on that is more than you're going to get in some S&P 500 ETF.
Absolutely. I completely agree with that. And that is one of the biggest things I did early on as well, is it just, the knowledge compounds over time. And the first one, books, is a major one. And it's one that I tried to, especially in my 20s, made sure that I would read at least one business or personal finance book every single week. And I've talked about the systems on this podcast on how to do that. But what are some of your favorite books that have been life-changing that you have read over your career?
Yeah, I think Rich Dad Poor Dad was like the very first book I read that really just started to change that mindset. You've got Millionaire Messenger by Brendon Burchard. And with him, it was really just showing like, man, it is your message that can reach millions, and also just showing you the different ways that you can do that, whether it be a blog, courses, podcast, video. Another one that more on the business side was Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Work Week. And I love that one for my personal example, because I had started my blog at Good Financial Sense at that time, and I was doing everything. And I just didn't allow myself to invest into hiring somebody. And because I thought I need to hire a full-time person. I'd never done that. I don't know how to do that. And in that book, he talked about, this is, I think, probably the first time we started hearing this term virtual assistants, hiring people from overseas and, hiring assistants from the Philippines. And after reading his book, it was, I think within a few weeks, I found my first virtual assistant, and I hired her to basically take care of the images on all my blog posts. And I calculated perfectly enough, she was saving me about 4 hours a week, which I thought was fitting since it was 4-hour work week. And I could use that time to either write more content or record videos or podcasts or do other money-making activities instead of me trying to find the perfect image for a blog post. So like those were books that I look back either were a mindset shift or gave me actionable items that I could, basically implement right off the bat and start to seeing immediate results.
Those are fantastic books, and we'll link those up in the show notes as well, because those had major impacts. Obviously, Rich Dad Poor Dad is a major one for the financial side. And then 4-Hour Work Week, if you haven't read that yet, that is a book that will unlock a lot of things for you. It's obviously, you're not going to work 4 hours for most situations, but you can, in terms of get a lot of time back so that you can accelerate your path to wealth and a lot of other things you want to do in business, which is absolutely amazing. So when it comes to courses, Jeff, a lot of people, and I completely agree with you as well, I resisted courses very early on as well. Some courses have higher price tags than others, but I have learned more through courses than just about anything else, I think, because it's a way to focus on one specific thing that you need to learn and be able to implement it. They do things where you can just go through the process in a month or so and have mastered some of those subjects just by going through the courses. So if someone is interested in courses, should they be looking towards potentially their business? Should they be looking towards maybe their finances? Or even beyond that, is there courses maybe if you're looking to climb the corporate ladder, for example? Should that be something you'd be looking at as well?
Yeah, I really just think it depends on where you're at and where you're trying to get to. And I was actually ahead of time thinking about this. And, for me, YouTube has been, this love-hate relationship, where I love doing videos, and you got the YouTube algorithm, which we could talk about another time. But going back to my initial YouTube journey, like at the beginning, I was clueless about cameras and how to even like script out a video and editing. And going back in time, there was a course called, I think it was like Video Traffic Academy. It was $97. It was Lewis Howes and James Wedmore, and this was probably like 12 years ago. And it was like the best $97 I ever invested, because I learned all these things that I just didn't know about cameras and editing and YouTube and just a lot of basic things, right? And with that $97, I went from having literally like no subscribers to eventually reaching almost 10,000. And that was like a huge hurdle for me. Fast forward 3 or 4 years later, I'm trying new things and it's just not quite working. So then I invested, I think it was $3,500 for another YouTube course. This was Brian Dean's, and I can't even remember the name of his course, but it was a YouTube course. And when I bought his course, I went from just under 10,000 and it surpassed over 100,000, just under 400,000 subscribers now. But I contribute, like, it was his course that showed me like that next step, that the things I just needed. Of course, there's like 6 years in between, right? So YouTube also changed how it all formatted. But those are very two clear examples where my goal was I wanted to grow my following. I wanted to produce better quality videos. I want to enjoy, also make money on it. So it was very specific what I was trying to get. And both those courses met that need at two different times in my life.
I love that. And that is the perfect example of something. If you're trying to master something and you're trying to do it in a way where you want to master it over a specific period of time,